Uncle Trev in the Silent Movies by Jack Lasenby. What terrible things did Uncle Trev and Mr. Burns do when they were young? I asked Mum. What's that? You said Uncle Trev got up to some terrible things when he was young. He and Billy Burns. Mr. Burns to you? Yes, Mum said. So they did. Well, what sort of things? I'm sure you can think of enough ways of getting into trouble without copying your uncle, Mum said. She was mixing something over at the bench. There, she said, dipping spoonfuls of the mixture onto trays, which she slid into the oven. I liked the latch and hinges on our old oven because they looked like swordfish. Do you want to lick the spoon? Mum asked. And the bowl, I said. I licked the spoon, wiped my finger around the bowl, and licked it. Keep that blanket tucked around your legs, Mum said. There's an icy draft that comes in the back door every time I open it. They were really just as bad when they came back from the war, she said. Worse, if anything. You'd have thought they would have grown up with all they saw there, but they were just as bad as ever. Childish. The things they did to that Mr. Wilson, and she went tsk, tsk, with her tongue. Old Man Wilson? Oh, you mustn't call him that. But everyone calls him Old Man Wilson. Well, just don't let me catch you calling him that again. Besides, Mrs. Wilson's a very pleasant person. She is the kindest thing. Yes, I said. But everyone hates Old Man Wilson. Mum looked at me. I thought I just told you not to call him that. Might as well talk to the air. Do you want to hear this story or not? I tucked the blanket around my legs, sat up and listened. Mum stood over at the sink, looked out the window, and smiled to herself. I used to play the piano for the silent movies, she said, before the talkies came in. When was that? Before you were even thought of. The pictures didn't have any sound then, so somebody had to play the piano. What do you mean? Well, they often had words along the bottom of the screen, and there were certain pieces you played. Noisy pieces for noisy scenes, quiet ones for quiet scenes. You know, that sort of thing. How did you know what was coming next? Oh, you just kept one eye on the screen. You could tell what was happening. You could just read the music. You just had to play by memory. When I started, I wrote out a list of pieces. Then it got easy after a while. I didn't have to think of what I was playing. It just came without thinking as I watched the screen. Did you get in for free? Of course. Gee, that must have been good. Mum? Yes. Did you have to play all the time? She was still standing at the sink, looking out the window. She turned and looked back into the kitchen. Oh, no, she said. Sometimes you had a rest, when there was a part that didn't need any music. They had the words on the screen sometimes, remember? Oh, yes. Well, one night there was a film that didn't need much music. A ghost film. I played some scary stuff now and then, but realized it was even scarier without the music. Was it good? Everyone was terrified, if that's what you mean. I was too busy wondering what to play next to get caught up in the film, Mum said. I wish we had silent movies now. Mum looked down at me. You'd just say that they were old-fashioned, she said. No, I wouldn't. I remember that night, Mum went on. The picture was near its end. There was a silence in the hall. There'd been a few shrieks earlier, and someone had rolled a bottle along the floor, but people were so frightened now they just shut up and watched. Nobody moved. Well, what was happening? There was a murderer waiting behind a hedge or something. Police were waiting to catch him, and there was a girl running along a street. That's right, that's what it was. There'd been one murder, now you saw the murderer waiting behind a tree, waiting for another victim. The girl ran down the street past the trees, and she was scared at having to pass each one. And we knew which tree the murderer was hiding behind. The girl was getting closer and closer to it. I'd stopped playing and was sitting looking. People across from me sitting forward to watch, or squashing themselves backwards into their seat. Some had their hands over their eyes and were peeping between their fingers. Then the girl stopped right in front of the murderer's tree, with her back to it. Everybody in the hall wanted to scream at her to look around, the murderer just stepping out to grab the girl. I wanted to scream out to her, to tell her to look around. She looked out of the screen, and her lips moved, and a voice came from them as if she was really speaking to us there in the hall. And she asked us, "Where's Old Man Wilson?" And another voice from the screen said, "Look out, he's right behind you." The murderer leapt, the girl ran, and the police rushed out of hiding, but it was too late. The hall was in uproar. Everyone was shrieking with laughter. I started playing something but couldn't hear the piano myself for the noise. Anyway, the film was almost over. By the time they'd quietened down, the girl was safe and the police were dragging the murderer away. It was the end. Mr. Black got up, turned on the lights the way he still does today. People were still laughing. Then there was silence, and Mr. Wilson stood up. "Old man Wilson?" Mum frowned. "Do you want to hear the rest of the story or not?" she asked. I sat back. "Well," she said. Mr. Wilson stood up and shouted, "There's someone behind that screen!" and he ran for the steps at the side of the stage. Mr. Black ran up the steps on the other side. They searched the stage behind the screen and the dressing rooms out the back, while everybody sat and watched. Mr. Wilson even insisted they hoist up the screen. You know how it swings up when they want to use the stage for dances and things? Oh, yes. Well, the hall was still full, and they pulled back those heavy curtains till we could all see there was nobody there. Then somebody noticed the outside door of the men's dressing room was unlocked. Someone had gone out that way. "Well, who?" "Your Uncle Trev and that friend of his, that Billy Burns." "Well, how do you know?" I'd recognised their voices. "Did old man Wilson recognise them?" "If you use that name once more, you can go back to bed, and I won't tell you another word of the story." Well, he hadn't recognised their voices. Nobody has. I suppose because they were all so surprised. But I knew it was them. They called in here for a cup of tea, of course, before going out to their farms, and I noticed their trouser legs were wet with dew from the long grass where they'd run around the side of the hall and come in the front again to watch Mr. Wilson lose his temper. He was angry, of course, as he had every right to be. At the next hall committee meeting, he wanted the pictures closed down. Or were they? No, but the first talkies came along not long after that, so your uncle couldn't pull that trick again. Must have been fun in the olden days, I said, having silent movies. Oh, I was quite pleased when the talkies came, Mum said. I could sit in a decent seat and watch the film without having to think of what I was going to play next. "My biscuits!" she shrieked. She wrenched open the oven door. She seized her sugar bag oven cloth and whipped out the trays, sliding the biscuits off to cool on a rack on the bench. "That's what comes of talking to you when I should be paying attention to what I'm doing," she said. "No, I caught them just in time." "Here," she said, "take one and get back into your bed. You've been up long enough." I wanted to ask how Uncle Trev had known what to say, and just when to say it from behind the screen, but knew Mum wouldn't tell me any more. I was tired from sitting up in the chair in front of the stove anyway. I climbed into my bed, ate my biscuit, and I must have gone to sleep straight away.